I am Catherine Sterling. At 32 years old, I lived under the impression that I was the stable foundation holding my family together. As the firstborn who moved away from our tiny Georgia town to build a career, I became the primary benefactor for everyone's financial needs. When my younger brother announced his engagement, I didn't hesitate to wire $78,000. I told my parents to spare no expense on the venue, the music, or the planning. I thought I was investing in their happiness, unaware that I was actually financing my own exclusion. The breaking point arrived while I was working at my Atlanta office. My phone displayed a call from Sophie, the wedding planner. I answered on speaker while continuing my budget analysis. "Hey, Sophie," I said, "is the guest count finalized?" There was a heavy silence that caused me to stop typing. "Lauren," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. Your parents called today and instructed me to remove your name from the guest list." I initially treated it as a joke, pointing out that I was the one paying for the event. "They claimed the $78,000 was a gift," Sophie explained. "They told me your schedule was too packed to attend and insisted it would be easier for everyone if you weren't there." A chill ran through me as I realized they were keeping the money while cutting me out of the wedding. When I questioned Jenna's compliance, she reminded me that they were the ones signing the legal documents. I looked out at the city skyline I had spent my life working toward. My own family had effectively erased me while spending my money without a second thought. "Sophie," I stated firmly, "you know that every major vendor for this wedding is part of my hospitality group's network." She laughed nervously, admitting that while technically true, my mother kept insisting I no longer wanted to be involved with the finances. "I want you to pull every single vendor," I commanded. "Lauren, if I do that, the entire wedding will fall apart," she whispered. "You literally own everything." "Exactly," I replied. "Now they can see the reality of what Thamey name is Catherine Sterling. I'm 32 years old, and until last month, I genuinely believed I was the reliable pillar holding my family together." As the oldest child, I was the one who moved away from our small Georgia town, established a successful career, and provided financial support whenever someone was in a bind. When my younger brother got engaged, I didn't hesitate to wire $78,000. I told my parents to handle the arrangements, the venue, the coordinator, the band, and to make it spectacular. I thought I was investing in my family's happiness. I didn't realize I was actually funding my own erasure. The breaking point arrived while I was at my office in downtown Atlanta, focused on a budget analysis. My phone buzzed with a call from Sophie, the wedding planner. I answered on speaker while I continued to work. "Hey, Sophie, what's the news? Do you have the final guest count?" There was a heavy silence on the other end that made me stop typing. "Lauren," she said softly, "I am so incredibly sorry. Your parents contacted me this morning. They've requested that I strike your name from the guest list." I actually let out a startled laugh. "Remove me? I'm the one paying for the entire wedding." Another long pause followed. I could hear the sound of papers being moved. "They claimed the $78,000 was a gift. They told me your schedule is too demanding for you to attend. They insisted it would be less stressful for everyone if you weren't involved." I felt a chill settle in my chest. "So, let me get this straight," I said slowly. "They pocketed the money, cut me out of the event, and you just went along with it." "Lauren, what was I supposed to do?" "They are the ones signing the contracts. At least, that's what they believe." I turned my chair toward the window, looking out at the city skyline I had helped build. These people were my parents, and they had calmly deleted me from my own brother's wedding while cashing my check without a second thought. "Sophie," I said, my voice becoming sharp and clear, "we both know that every major vendor for this wedding operates under my company's corporate umbrella." She gave a nervous, quiet laugh. "Technically, that's true. But your mother keeps repeating that you told them not to worry about the money anymore." I felt something inside me click into place. "Fine," I said, "then here is my directive." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. "Pull every single vendor." There was total silence, followed by a whisper. "Lauren, if I do that, your brother's wedding will completely collapse. You realize you own all of them." "Exactly," I replied. "Now you understand the value of what they just threw away." Before I reveal what happened after I gave that order, and how my parents reacted when the wedding they built with my money began to crumble, tell me this in the comments. What time is it where you are? And which city or country are you watching from? I want to see how far this family's secret is about to travel. I didn't sleep at all that night. Jenna's voice kept echoing in my head, replaying the words about being removed from the guest list like a skipping record. At 3:00 a.m., I gave up on trying to rest and opened my laptop at the kitchen counter. I can handle numbers. Emotions are more difficult. I'm a forensic accountant and the CFO for a regional hospitality group. We own everything from venues and catering firms to a luxury decor company and a boutique floral studio that serves most of northern Georgia. My job involves tracking every penny. People rarely get away with lying to me. That night, I decided my parents wouldn't be the exception. I opened the wedding folder on my work drive, the one I had created months ago when I first sent the $78,000. Back then, I thought I was being overly cautious by treating my brother's wedding like a corporate acquisition. Now, I was relieved I had. I reviewed the contracts. The venue, catering, floral, design, band, photography, and transportation. Each one had a specific note at the top. Internal discount approved, Hayes family. Some even included a second note, Lauren to personally cover overages. It was my own handwriting from late-night discussions with Sophie when she asked to expand the budget. I scrolled further and found something that made my stomach turn. An email thread I wasn't supposed to be included on had been automatically routed to my folder due to our company's internal system rules. It was from 3 weeks ago. Subject regarding Lauren's involvement. Sophie was confirming final details. She asked if I would be part of the ceremony or just a guest. My mother replied from her personal email. Please keep Lauren off any special lists. She insisted on paying, but she has a habit of taking over. This day is about Caleb, not her. Regarding the money, she knows it's a gift and doesn't need credit for it. Then, a second email from my father arrived minutes later. And please don't mention the finances to Lauren again. She's busy. We don't want her stressed. Let's phrase everything as if we're covering the costs ourselves. I read that sentence 3 times. Busy, stressed, not wanting me involved. I clicked into another folder and found screenshots Sophie had saved from a family group chat I hadn't been added to. The title was Wedding Brainstorm, No Drama. My brother's fiancé had written, I love Lauren, but I don't want the vibe to feel like her event. She's so intense. If she's there, everyone will just focus on her career, her success, and her money. Caleb deserves a day that's about him. My mother responded. Exactly. She'll understand. She always understands. She's the strong one, a cousin added. So she pays, you two take the credit, and she doesn't show up. That's efficient. There were several laughing emojis. I stared at the screen, my palms sweating, feeling that familiar role of the strong one wrap around me like a set of chains. I was the responsible one, the walking bank account who wasn't supposed to have feelings. Tell me honestly, if you saw a chat where your own family joked about taking your money while keeping you away to preserve the vibe, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace, or would you burn the peace to the ground? I thought about all the small moments that had led to this. The times I covered my brother's rent in secret. The loans that became gifts because my mother reminded me Caleb wasn't as lucky as I was. The day I bought my first property and my dad told me not to brag because Caleb was sensitive about his income. For years, I had made myself smaller at home. I wore cheaper clothes when visiting, avoided talking about my promotions, and let them call me bossy when I was just trying to help. Now I was looking at the end result of that pattern in black and white. I had taught them that my feelings were optional. But accountants have a specific trait. Once we see a pattern, we can't ignore it. I scrolled back to Jenna's number on my phone. If my parents wanted to treat my money like a faceless gift, I would show them what happens when that gift is revoked. My thumb hovered over the call button. I knew this single decision would destroy months of planning and throw my brother's wedding into total chaos. I also knew that if I did nothing, I was teaching them once again that they could erase me without consequence. I hit call. The following afternoon, I drove 3 hours to my parents' house with the kind of focus I usually save for court testimony. I had already spoken to Sophie that morning. I'll tell you exactly what I told her in a moment, but first, you need to see the battlefield I was walking into. My parents live in a perfectly manicured suburb near Alpharetta, the kind of place where everyone gossips but pretends they don't. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw extra cars lined up on the street. My uncle's truck, my aunt's SUV, my grandmother's old sedan. They were circling the wagons. I walked in without knocking. The living room was crowded. My parents were on the sofa, my brother in an armchair, and his fiancée perched on the arm as if it were a throne. 2 aunts were at the dining table, pretending not to eavesdrop. The TV was muted, frozen on a news segment about inflation. "There she is," my father said, standing up as if he were leading a meeting. "Lauren, we were just talking about you." "I bet you were," I replied, closing the door behind me. "Before we begin, I want this on the record. I know about the group chat. I know about the emails, and I know you told Sophie to remove me from the guest list." My mother's face went white. "Who showed you those?" "The cloud," I said. "You raised an accountant, remember? You taught me to keep receipts." Caleb looked from me to our parents, his face full of confusion. "Wait, what group chat?" He hadn't seen it. That was a small mercy I hadn't expected. "We'll discuss that later," my mother snapped, giving me a warning look. "Lauren, sweetheart, you're blowing this out of proportion. You're always so busy, we thought we were doing you a favor." I let out a short, cold laugh. "A favor?" "By taking $78,000 from me, telling the planner I'm not invited, and then lying to everyone that I'm too busy to attend my own brother's wedding." My father folded his arms, trying to appear calm. "You offered that money. You said, and I quote, 'Don't worry about paying me back. I just want you to enjoy the day.' We took you at your word. And you are busy. You're always in meetings or on your phone. We didn't want to stress you out with details. Details like whether I exist." I shot back. "Details like whether I get to watch my brother get married." Caleb finally spoke, his voice tight. "Is this true? You told Sophie to take Lauren off the list." My future sister-in-law shifted uncomfortably. "We just thought the focus should be on us." "Your parents said Lauren didn't mind, that she prefers to keep work and family separate." "Work and family," I repeated slowly. "You mean the work that built the company that owns your venue, your caterer, your florist, and your designer?" A look of uncertainty crossed her face. My father stepped in quickly. "That's exactly the problem, Lauren. Everything always comes back to you and your career. We didn't want people whispering about how you paid for everything. We wanted Caleb to look like he had it together. You can't blame us for trying to give your brother some pride." "So, you lied," I said flatly. "You used my money to play pretend for the neighbors. You made me an invisible investor in my own family." Most people would expect a big, emotional speech where I cry and ask for their love. Instead, I did what I do best. I went straight to the numbers. "Dad, how much do you think this wedding costs without my internal discounts?" He frowned. "I don't know, more." "Try $140,000, I said. "You're getting everything at nearly half price because my company owns the vendors and the contracts list me as the financial backer, not you. You think you're the clients, but on paper you aren't." My mother squeezed her hands together. "What are you saying, Lauren?" I looked at Caleb. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "I'm saying I called Sophie this morning," I said quietly. "I told her to pull every single vendor under my umbrella." My mother gasped. "You did what?" "The venue, catering, flowers, design, band, photography, transportation. I listed them off on my fingers. All canceled. Their choice was simple. Stay loyal to me, the person who pays their salaries, or risk a lawsuit for breaching internal agreements. Guess who they chose? The room erupted. My father shouted that I had lost my mind and asked how they would look to everyone. My mother asked how I could do this to my brother. My aunts whispered frantically. Through it all, Caleb just sat there, speechless. "No," I said, my voice low. "Do you know how you look? You erased your daughter for appearances. You treated $78,000 like a cover charge for your fantasy. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourselves when you decided my money was necessary, but my presence was negotiable." I turned to Caleb, softening my tone slightly. I'm sorry you're affected by this. You didn't know about the emails. You didn't write the words, she'll understand, she's the strong one. But you also didn't ask who was actually paying. You let them shield you from the truth because it was easier. His jaw clenched. So what now, Lauren? You want me to call off the wedding? That's not my decision, I said, but you should know this. Without major changes, there is no big wedding. No vineyard, no custom menu, no 12-piece band. Not on my dime and not under my company's name. Let me ask you, if you were standing there, would you have backed down when your family started shouting? Or would you have held your line and let the consequences fall where they belonged? Because I didn't flinch. Not this time. On the drive back to Atlanta, my phone was a war zone. I had missed calls, voicemails, and furious texts in the family group chat I was still in. Lauren, answer your father. This is childish. You're ruining your brother's life over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings? That phrase kept repeating until it almost became funny. They were right about one thing, I was hurt, but I wasn't acting out of a temporary sting. I was correcting years of imbalance with one decisive move. Back at my office, I closed the door and worked through my contact list like a crisis drill. First, the venue, one of our flagship properties in the Blue Ridge Mountains, booked solid for months. I called the general manager. The Hayes wedding, I said. Cancel the date. He hesitated. That's your family's event, isn't it? Not anymore, I replied. Release the date. Transfer the deposit into our break glass fund for staff emergencies. If my parents want the space, they can apply as external clients and pay full price in advance with no discount. I sent the same message to our catering director. I told them to pull the custom menu, stop the special orders, and reassign the staff. If ingredients were already bought, they were to be redirected to other events with no refund given to the family. Their gift to themselves just became an internal donation. Was that petty? Perhaps. But my parents had told everyone my money was a gift. Fine. I decided to honor that, just not in the way they expected. The gift would go to my employees, to bonuses, and to clients who actually appreciated us, not to a performance of fake financial stability for my parents' social circle. Next was the florist. I'm invoking Clause 12, I told the owner, who is my partner in that business. The client has violated our goodwill agreement. Cancel the order and keep the non-refundable costs. He whistled softly. Your family really messed up, didn't they? They removed me from the guest list and lied about it, I said. Consider this a teachable moment. The band was actually relieved. They had been offered a higher-paying corporate gig for the same date. You're sure? The manager asked. If we walk away from your brother's wedding, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said. Take the corporate show. With every cancellation, my phone buzzed with new notifications, forwarded emails from my parents, frantic and confused. They kept insisting there was a misunderstanding and that they were the clients. One reply from the venue manager made me smile grimly. According to our records, Ms. Catherine Sterling is the financial sponsor and majority owner of this property. Her instructions take precedence. Within 3 hours, the wedding my parents had bragged about for months had vanished. The deposits were gone, the decor plans were useless, and the specialty linens were canceled. Sometimes revenge is dramatic, mine was administrative, but the impact was nuclear. That evening, my best friend Chloe called. I filled her in on everything. She was silent for a long time. I'm proud of you, she finally said. It sounds strange since you just detonated your brother's dream wedding, but you've let them walk over you for years. Eventually, the bill comes due. Do you think I went too far? I asked, feeling a rare moment of vulnerability. If they had just forgotten to consult you, maybe, she said. But they took your money, erased you, and lied to your face. There's a difference between a mistake and building a reality where you don't matter. It got worse for my parents. Vendors talk. Within 48 hours, people in our network knew the basics. The owner's family tried to hold a wedding without her using her own money, so she pulled the plug. Locally, people were starting to take sides. I want your honest opinion. Was I wrong to use my power this way, or was it the only language they would understand? By the second day, my family's calm facade had cracked. For the first time, Caleb added me to a private group chat without our parents. "We need to talk," his first message read. Just us. The group consisted of me, Caleb, and Claire. My stomach tightened, but I opened it. "Caleb, is it true? Did you really cancel everything?" "Me, I canceled every vendor that reports to me or my companies." "Yes." "Claire, how could you do that to us? This is our wedding. Your issue is with your parents, not us." I took a breath before responding. "Me, you both benefited from my money and my professional relationships. You were both in the chat where my parents decided to exclude me for the vibe. That makes you part of the decision." There was a long pause before Caleb replied. "Caleb, I never wanted you off the list. I didn't even know they did that. Mom told me you were too busy to commit to the date. I believed her. That's on me." "Claire, we just wanted a day that didn't revolve around comparing us to you. You're intimidating, Lauren. Everyone talks about your career and your success." I didn't want to feel small at my own wedding. I stared at that message, feeling a mix of anger and something else. "Me, you know what would have fixed that? A conversation. You could have told me you felt overshadowed, and we could have found a way to include me that didn't involve money. Instead, you let my parents remove me like a problem." I sent one final message to force Caleb to face reality. "Me, Caleb, do you know how many times I paid your rent in college?" "Caleb, a few times." "Me, try 13 times. Do you know who covered the down payment on your truck when your credit was ruined?" Silence followed. "Me, I didn't throw it in your face then because I wanted you to be proud." But I realize now that my silence just taught everyone that my help was automatic, expected, and invisible. Caleb finally spoke up, admitting he had no idea it had happened that many times. He explained that he simply assumed our parents were handling everything. That was exactly the problem. Later that evening, I received a different kind of alert. My cousin had tagged me in a Reddit thread asking if the post was about me. The title was blunt. "My parents removed me from my brother's wedding guest list but kept the $78,000 I paid. So, I pulled every vendor." Someone had uploaded a condensed version of my ordeal, likely pieced together from family gossip and vendor leaks. The comment section was exploding. Many users argued I wasn't the jerk, calling the situation straight-up theft and financial abuse. They noted that you can't treat a person like an ATM and then act surprised when the card is declined. There were critics, too. Some claimed I ruined a wedding just to prove a point, citing this as the reason why family and money shouldn't mix. The recurring question was whether this was justified or simply going too far. I wish I could say I stayed away from the comments, but I didn't. I read every single one, watching total strangers dissect my life. Oddly enough, it was helpful. Seeing people who didn't know me evaluate the facts without years of emotional baggage made the situation clearer. They could see the reality that my own family refused to acknowledge. My parents were naturally devastated. My mother called me, her voice trembling with rage. "How could you let this be posted online?" She demanded an answer, worried that our neighbors, friends, and the pastor would see it. I wasn't the one who posted it. I replied, "But maybe you should ask yourself why so many strangers see the problem here, and it's not my decision to cancel the vendors. It's the fact that you cut me out and kept the money." My father joined the conversation on speakerphone. "You're making us look like monsters. We raised you and sacrificed for you, and this is how you show your gratitude." "You aren't monsters," I said quietly. "You are people who made a selfish choice and got called out for it. You can still fix this. You can apologize, refund what you can, and be honest with me, Caleb, and the community you're so worried about. Or you can keep pretending you're the victims. That choice is yours." I started wondering, when family crosses a line this severely, is public accountability fair, or should it stay private even if that means nothing ever changes? The Reddit thread stayed on my mind. Strangers kept giving the same advice. Tell your own story before someone else tells a distorted version for you. That's how I found myself at my kitchen table again, staring at a blinking cursor on a blank social media post. I rarely share personal details online. My feeds are usually just professional updates and travel photos. But this felt different. This time, the numbers were personal. I started typing. I explained that I had contributed $78,000 to a family wedding and used my professional position to cut the total costs in half. I detailed how I was removed from the guest list while they kept my money and connections, telling the planner I was too busy to attend. I paused, then finished the post. I explained that I did what any accountant would do when a budget is abused. I closed the account. I canceled the vendors under my umbrella and redirected the funds. I was careful not to name my brother or parents specifically. This wasn't a witch hunt. It was a refusal to let my story be twisted into me being dramatic. I ended the post by saying that family should be about support, not silent exploitation. If love depends on a lack of boundaries, it isn't love, it's dependence. Sometimes the healthiest move is to accept the fallout of saying no. Within an hour, my inbox was overflowing with messages from old friends and colleagues. They shared their own stories of being the strong sibling expected to carry the family until they broke. One message stood out: "I wish I'd done this 10 years ago. Maybe I wouldn't resent my family so much now." Of course, my parents saw it too. My mom sent a screenshot followed by a demand to take it down. I didn't use any names, I replied. I simply told the truth. That's more than you did when you spoke to Sophie. Then something unexpected happened. My grandmother, who lives on a fixed income and rarely comments on my life, called me. "I read that post you wrote," she said, struggling with the technology. "Your parents are very upset." I know, I braced myself. "I didn't mean to involve you, Grandma." "Lauren, when your father was your brother's age, we had nothing," she said gently. "When you started making money, I saw them start to lean on you. I thought it was just family helping family at first, but then I heard how they spoke about you when you weren't there. Your success was a tool for them, but also an embarrassment. Tears blurred my vision. Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have listened?" she asked. "You wanted so badly to be the good daughter. Sometimes love makes us deaf to the warning signs. I'm not saying I agree with how far this went. A canceled wedding is a heavy thing, but they needed to wake up. You needed to stop letting them spend your life as if it belonged to them." That small validation meant everything. It proved I wasn't crazy. I decided to take things a step further, not for spite, but for my own protection. I met with my company's legal and HR teams. From now on, any family member booking with our businesses will be treated as a standard external client. I instructed. No silent sponsorships. Any contribution I make will be documented as a separate gift with clear terms. My lawyer asked about my personal accounts. I gave him a tight smile. Those get the same treatment. The Bank of Lauren is officially closed for unscheduled withdrawals. If you've ever been the responsible one in your family, ask yourself, what would change if you applied professional standards to your relatives? Clear expectations and the right to say no are essential. A week later, my parents called an emergency meeting. I insisted we meet at a neutral conference room in one of my properties. My parents looked exhausted, Caleb had shadows under his eyes, and Claire held a folder of backup plans. "We lost almost all the deposits," my dad said bluntly. "Other vendors are wary of us now because of the drama. We've had to tell relatives the big wedding might not happen. Do you know how humiliating this is?" "Humiliation isn't fatal." I replied calmly, "But losing a daughter might be." My mother flinched. "Don't say that, you're our child." "You keep saying that, but your actions don't match. You were happy to celebrate a version of this family that didn't include me. That changes things." Caleb leaned forward. "We postponed the wedding," he said quietly. "Mom and Dad can't afford to recreate what we had without your money. And honestly, I don't want to start my marriage on a lie." He looked at our parents. I read the emails and the group chats. "The way you talk about Lauren is wrong. You treat her like a machine we only plug in when we need something." My father tried to argue that he was exaggerating. "No, I'm not." Ethan's voice shook. "You call her too much when she sets boundaries, yet you brag about her wealth to your friends. You let me depend on her without ever telling me we were asking too much. You put me on a pedestal and treated her like the scaffolding no one is supposed to notice." Seeing my brother finally stand up for the truth was both painful and healing. My mother began to cry, claiming they just wanted everyone to feel loved. "Then you should have helped Caleb build his own life instead of pretending he already had one," I said. "Taking my money and hiding my role didn't make him stronger. It just made him dependent on a lie. Claire finally spoke, asking what happens next. I took a breath. Real life doesn't always end with total forgiveness or total estrangement. If you want to get married, do it on a scale you can actually afford. A courthouse, a park, a small restaurant, I won't sabotage it. But I will not finance any more illusions. No more secret sponsorships. If I contribute, it will be with my full consent and clear credit. If you ever treat my presence as optional while my money is essential again, that will be the last time we speak. My father fell silent. My mother wiped her eyes and whispered that they were wrong and should have been grateful instead of entitled. Admitting fault doesn't fix the damage instantly. The lavish wedding is gone. Some relatives still think I'm the villain, but others have reached out to say they wish they had the courage to set similar boundaries. Caleb and Claire got married 6 months later in a simple park ceremony. I was there, and I gave them a nice gift, but I didn't pay for the event. There were no designer linens or 12-piece bands, but there was no lie at the center of it either. My parents are learning. My mom now catches herself before calling me lucky, acknowledging instead that I work hard. My dad has stopped introducing me as the rich one and now expresses pride in the businesses I run. It isn't perfect, but it's honest. Here is the lesson: love without boundaries becomes leverage. Money without boundaries becomes control. If you are the fixer in your family, audit your relationships. Who is investing back in you? Who treats you like a person rather than infrastructure? Self-respect isn't cruelty. Saying no isn't revenge. I simply stopped paying for a life where I didn't exist. If you were in my shoes, if your parents took your money, cut you from the list, and lied about your absence, would you have canceled the vendors or stayed silent to keep the peace? What boundaries do you need to set in your own life? Sometimes, the only way to teach respect is to stop permitting disrespect.